March 14, 1968, 6:44 p.m., 125th Street, Harlem. 8 NYPD patrol cars, 16 armed officers, 1 target. Bumpy Johnson's black Cadillac was boxed in, trapped, no way out. The police had been planning this for weeks. They had intelligence that Johnson was carrying $50,000 in cash and documents that could bring down half the precinct. This was supposed to be easy. Surround him, arrest him, end of story. But here's what the NYPD didn't account for. They weren't just chasing one man. They were chasing a legend. And Harlem doesn't let legends fall without a fight. What happened next was 47 minutes of absolute chaos. A high-speed chase through the streets of Harlem that turned into something nobody had ever seen before. An entire neighborhood versus the New York Police Department. Cars crashing, helicopters circling, Commissioner of Police himself in the air coordinating the takedown, and somehow, impossibly, Bumpy Johnson vanished, right in front of their eyes. No arrests, no evidence, just $75,000 in damage and a story that would echo through Harlem for the next 50 years. By the time this chase ended, 3 police cars were totaled, Bumpy's Cadillac was destroyed, and the NYPD had learned a lesson they'd never forget. You can't catch a man when an entire city is hiding him. This is the true story of the greatest police chase in New York history, the night Harlem beat the NYPD. Before we dive into what happened in those 72 hours, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your location in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. New York, Texas, or Chicago, wherever you are, let me know. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change how you see power forever. To understand what happened on March 14, 1968, you need to understand who Bumpy Johnson was in 1968. Bumpy was 61 years old. He'd been running Harlem for over 30 years, policy banks, protection rackets. He kept the Italian mob from taking over. He kept white gangsters out. He was the king. But by 1968, things were changing. The civil rights movement was exploding. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was organizing protests. Malcolm X had been assassinated 3 years earlier. The Black Panthers were rising, and Harlem was a powder keg. The NYPD wanted Bumpy Johnson gone, not just arrested, gone because Bumpy represented something dangerous, power, black power, the kind that didn't bow to badges. So they'd been watching him for months, building a case, waiting for the perfect moment. March 14, 1968, 6:30 p.m. Bumpy Johnson left his apartment on West 147th Street. He was dressed sharp, suit, fedora, gold watch. He climbed into his black 1966 Cadillac Eldorado. His driver and bodyguard, William "Quick" Davis, was behind the wheel. Quick Davis wasn't just any driver. This man was a legend in his own right, former race car driver, knew every street, every alley, every shortcut in Harlem. They called him Quick because he'd never been caught, not once, not in 15 years. Bumpy had a meeting downtown, business. He was carrying $50,000 in cash, payment for protection, and he had documents, ledgers, names, dates, evidence of police corruption that would destroy careers if it ever saw daylight. The NYPD knew. They had an informant, someone close to Bumpy, someone who'd told them everything. At 6:44 p.m., Bumpy's Cadillac turned onto 125th Street, the heart of Harlem, busy street, people shopping, music playing, normal Thursday evening. Then Quick Davis saw them. Police cars, not 1, not 2, 8 patrol cars emerging from side streets, forming a perfect box around the Cadillac. Front back both sides, no escape. Quick looked in the rearview mirror. "Boss, we got a problem." Bumpy didn't panic, just looked around calmly, counted the cars, saw the officers getting out with their guns drawn. "How bad?" Bumpy asked. 8 cars, maybe 16 cops. They knew we'd be here." Bumpy nodded slowly. Somebody talked. The police were moving fast, positioning themselves. One officer with a megaphone stepped forward. "Bumpy Johnson, step out of the vehicle with your hands up. You're under arrest." Quick's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you want me to do?" Bumpy looked at the police, looked at the crowd gathering on the sidewalks, looked at Quick. Then he smiled, that cold, calculating smile that meant somebody was about to have a very bad day. "Drive." Quick blinked. "Boss, there's 8 cars, we're boxed in." "I said drive." Quick Davis had been driving for Bumpy Johnson for 7 years. He'd learned one thing: when Bumpy said drive, you drive. Quick took a deep breath, shifted into gear, and slammed his foot on the gas. The initial escape. The Cadillac exploded forward, but Quick didn't go straight. He turned hard right, onto the sidewalk. People screamed, scattered, dove into storefronts. Quick was threading the needle at 40 miles per hour on a sidewalk built for walking. Somehow, miraculously, he didn't hit anyone. Fruit stands crashed, newspaper boxes flew, but no people. Behind them, chaos. The police cars couldn't follow onto the sidewalk. They were trapped by their own formation. Officers were screaming into radios, running to their cars, trying to regroup. Quick saw it, a narrow alley between 125th and 126th Street, maybe 8 feet wide. The Cadillac was 7 feet wide. He didn't hesitate, cranked the wheel left, aimed for the alley. "Hold on, boss." The Cadillac shot into the alley, metal screaming, side mirrors ripped off, paint scraped away in long, ugly streaks. But they made it through. They emerged onto 126th Street, free, for now. Behind them, the police were in complete disarray. Some cars were trying to back up. Others were attempting 3-point turns on the narrow street. Radios were going crazy. And that's when every cop in Manhattan heard the call. All units, this is a code 3, high-speed pursuit in progress. Suspect is Bumpy Johnson heading north on Lenox Avenue in a black Cadillac. Consider armed and dangerous. All available units respond. The chase was on. Quick Davis was flying, 60 miles per hour on city streets, weaving through traffic like a needle through fabric. He ran red lights, cut across oncoming lanes, made turns that shouldn't be possible in a car that size. Behind them, police sirens, getting closer, then farther, then closer again. 2 police cars were right on their tail. Quick could see them in the rear view, close, maybe 30 feet. He took a hard left onto 130th Street. The police followed. One of them got too aggressive, took the turn too fast, lost control. The police car jumped the curb, slammed into a parked car, totaled. 1 down. But more were coming. Quick could hear them, sirens from every direction. The NYPD was throwing everything at this. And that's when something incredible started happening. Harlem was waking up. Harlem rises. See, word was spreading, fast. Bumpy Johnson was being chased by the cops, and Harlem had a choice: stay neutral or get involved. Harlem got involved. On 131st Street, a group of men rolled garbage cans into the middle of the road. The pursuing police cars had to swerve, slow down. One crashed into a fire hydrant, water exploding everywhere. 2 down. On 135th Street, a woman saw the chase coming. She ran into the street, started directing traffic, waving cars into the intersection, creating a wall of vehicles right as the police cars arrived. The cops were stuck, honking, screaming, but they couldn't get through. Quick looked at Bumpy. "Boss, they're helping us." Bumpy nodded. "They always do." On 138th Street, teenagers on bikes rode alongside the Cadillac, shouting, pointing, showing Quick which streets were clear, which ones had police waiting. A kid on a Schwinn pulled up next to Quick's window. "Yo, don't take Lenox. They got 3 cars waiting at 140th. Quick nodded, turned right instead, headed east. This wasn't just a police chase anymore. This was a community effort, an entire neighborhood working together to protect one man. Why? Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a criminal to Harlem. He was their protector. He kept drugs out of the schools, kept Italian mobsters from extorting their businesses, put food on tables when people were hungry. And now the NYPD was trying to take him down, not on Harlem's watch. The helicopter. 28 minutes into the chase, Quick heard something new. a sound that made his blood run cold. Thump, 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 thump. A helicopter. He looked up, police chopper, hovering above them, spotlight cutting through the early evening darkness. And inside that helicopter was Commissioner Howard Leary himself, the head of the entire NYPD. This had become personal. Leary was on the radio, coordinating, watching from above, directing ground units to cut off escape routes. All units, suspect is heading north on Madison Avenue approaching 145th Street. Set up a blockade at 145th and Lenox. 6 cars, full stop. I want this over now. Quick heard it too. He had a police scanner in the car. Bumpy always insisted on it. Boss, they're setting up a trap. 145th and Lenox, 6 cars. Bumpy was quiet for a moment, thinking, calculating. How long until we get there? 3 minutes, maybe less. How many cars they got behind us? Quick check the mirrors, 4, maybe 5. And they got 6 waiting ahead. That's what they said. Bumpy nodded slowly. Keep driving. Boss, it's a trap. There's no way through 6 cars. Bumpy looked at Quick, and there was that smile again, cold, confident, terrifying. There's always a way through, just drive. The blockade. They turned onto Lenox Avenue, and there it was, 145th Street, 6 police cars parked bumper to bumper, completely blocking the road, 15 officers standing behind the cars, guns drawn. This was it, this was the end. No way out, no side streets, no alleys, just a wall of police cars and men with badges who wanted Bumpy Johnson behind bars. Quick slowed down. Boss, I can't. Don't slow down. What? I said don't slow down, speed up. Quick stared at him. Boss, that's suicide. No, that's a bet. I'm betting those cops don't want to die today, and I'm betting they'll move when they see us coming. And if they don't? Bumpy shrugged. Then we die like legends. Quick Davis took a deep breath. He'd driven for Bumpy for 7 years, never questioned him once. He wasn't about to start now. Quick slammed his foot on the gas. The Cadillac roared 60 miles per hour, 70, 80. Straight at the police blockade. The officers saw them coming. The helicopter spotlight was on them. Commissioner Leary was screaming into the radio. Stop the vehicle, or we will open fire. But Bumpy had calculated correctly. The officers had families, lives. They weren't going to stand in front of a 2-ton Cadillac going 80 miles per hour. At the last second they scattered, dove behind cars, jumped onto sidewalks. And Quick aimed the Cadillac right at the center of the blockade. Crash. Metal exploding, glass shattering, th. Cadillac hit 2 police cars head-on. The impact was devastating. The hood crumpled, steam poured from the engine, airbags deployed. Well, they didn't have airbags in 1966, but you get the idea. The Cadillac pushed through, barely, scraping between the wreckage, sparks flying, tires screaming. And then they were through, on the other side, free. But the Cadillac was dying. The hood was bent up, blocking the windshield, steam everywhere, the engine making terrible grinding noises. Quick could barely see. He was driving blind, using the side windows, instinct, memory. Boss, the car's done. We got maybe 2 minutes before she dies. Bumpy looked behind them. The police were regrouping, getting back in their cars. The helicopter was still overhead, tracking them. Get to the alley behind Jackie's. Quick knew the spot, a narrow alley off 147th Street. He turned hard. The Cadillac barely responded, but it made the turn. They rolled into the alley, and the Cadillac died, engine seized, smoke everywhere. They were sitting ducks. But Harlem wasn't done. Within seconds people appeared, young men, street kids, people who'd been watching the chase, waiting to help. Mr. Johnson, this way. A brown Chevrolet pulled up, nondescript, old, the kind of car nobody notices. Quick and Bumpy jumped out of the Cadillac, climbed into the Chevy. Behind them the young men went to work. They pushed the smoking Cadillac deeper into the alley, covered it with tarps, garbage, made it disappear. The Chevy drove out the other end of the alley, slow, casual, just another car in Harlem. Above them the helicopter was circling, confused. They'd seen the Cadillac go into the alley, but now there were 3 cars leaving. Which one was Johnson? On the street, more chaos. Decoy cars, brown Chevys, black Cadillacs. Suddenly there were a dozen vehicles that could be carrying Bumpy Johnson. The police didn't know where to look. And then the real genius move happened. Harlem residents started forming human shields, groups of people walking in front of cars, blocking the helicopter's view, making it impossible to track anyone. Commissioner Leary was losing his mind. Where is he? Somebody tell me where the hell he is. But nobody knew. Bumpy Johnson had vanished, right in front of the entire NYPD. At 7:31 p.m., exactly 47 minutes after the chase started, Commissioner Leary made the call. All units stand down, we've lost him. The chase was over. Bumpy Johnson had won. The aftermath. The damage report came in that night. 3 NYPD patrol cars totaled, 1 fire hydrant destroyed, approximately $75,000 in property damage. Miraculously, no civilians seriously injured. 2 police officers had minor injuries. Quick Davis had a bruised rib from the crash, but that was it. 0 arrests. The Cadillac was found 3 days later, completely stripped, nothing left but the frame. And Bumpy Johnson, gone, disappeared, like he'd never been there. Harlem erupted in celebration. Spontaneous street parties, people dancing in the streets, free drinks at every bar, musicians playing, people laughing. They'd beaten the NYPD, the entire community, together. The Amsterdam News ran a headline, "Harlem's finest outruns New York's finest." 3 days later, Bumpy Johnson held a press conference, walked right into a room full of reporters like nothing had happened. "I want to thank the Harlem community for their support," he said calmly, "and I want to compliment Mr. Quick Davis on his exceptional driving skills." A reporter asked, "Mr. Johnson, the police say you were carrying $50,000 and incriminating documents. Is that true?" Bumpy smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was just taking a drive through my neighborhood when the police started harassing me for no reason." "Will you press charges for police harassment?" "No, I'm a peaceful man. I just want to live my life." Commissioner Howard Leary, when asked about the chase, looked exhausted. "I will say this, Johnson's driver showed remarkable skill, and the Harlem community showed remarkable coordination, but this isn't over. We will get Bumpy Johnson eventually." They never did. 4 months later, on July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson died. Heart attack. He was 62 years old. But that chase, that 47-minute war between one man and the entire NYPD, that became legend. Here's what makes this story incredible. It wasn't just about one man escaping the police. It was about an entire community standing up and saying, no. March 14, 1968 was 3 weeks before Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. This was the height of the civil rights movement. Tensions between police and black communities were at an all-time high. And Harlem showed the world what could happen when a community decides to protect its own. Think about it, hundreds of people, all working together, blocking streets, creating decoys, risking arrest themselves to help one man escape. That's power, real power, not the kind that comes from a badge or a gun, the kind that comes from unity. The NYPD learned something that night. You can't beat a community that refuses to be beaten. They had helicopters, they had radios, they had guns, they had the law on their side. And they lost. Because Harlem had something stronger, they had each other. The damaged Cadillac, rumor is someone in Harlem kept it, turned it into a memorial, a reminder of the night they beat the NYPD. Quick Davis never drove again after that night, retired, moved to North Carolina, lived quietly, but people who knew him said he'd smile whenever someone mentioned March 14, 1968. Commissioner Leary never spoke about the chase again after that initial statement. It was too embarrassing, too public a loss. And Bumpy Johnson, he lived his last 4 months as a legend, the man who made the NYPD look foolish, the man Harlem protected, the man who proved that sometimes, just sometimes, the underdog wins. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What would you have done if you were in Harlem that night, if you saw the chase coming down your street? Would you have helped? Would you have risked arrest to roll a garbage can into the street, to point the wrong direction, to stand between Bumpy Johnson and the police? Think about that. Because that night, hundreds of people answered that question, and their answer was yes. Harlem didn't need superheroes, they had each other, and on March 14, 1968, that was enough. Bumpy Johnson's last great escape wasn't about one man's skill, it was about one community's courage. And that's a legacy worth remembering. If this story gave you chills, smash that subscribe button right now. We're bringing you the real history, the stories that show what happens when communities stand together, the moments that changed everything. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have helped Bumpy Johnson that night? Be honest, and tell me what other legendary stories you want to hear. Hit the bell because next week, we're going deep into another Bumpy Johnson story. The time he sat down with Lucky Luciano and walked out with a handshake that changed organized crime forever. Remember, they don't teach this in history class, but this is the history that matters, the history of resistance, of community, of power. See you next time.